You knew. You knew what I did and you said nothing. I didn't know, Zola. I just listened to the clay. But I went to the forest. I made a deal. How did you still win?
The clay screamed, not with a sound you could hear with your ears, but with something deeper. Something that only one woman in that entire village could feel. And what happened next would change everything. Stay with me, because this story is not just about pottery. It's about what jealousy does to a person when they let it win. Now, in a quiet village, where red earth clung to bare feet, where stories live longer than the people who told them, there lived a potter named Kemi. Every single morning, before the sun even dared to show its face, Kemi would kneel by the river bank, her fingers deep in the wet earth, whispering soft words, words that no one else could hear. Now, you might be thinking, okay, she's just a potter, what's the big deal? But the villagers knew. Oh, they knew. They said her pots felt warm even before the fire touched them. They said her jars held water that tasted sweeter, like something invisible had been poured into it along with the clay. They said her hands carried something not taught but given. That kind of gift, you can't fake it. You can't buy it. And for one woman in that village, you couldn't stand it. Across the same village, in a compound filled with sharp laughter and colder eyes, lived another potter. Her name was Zola. Now listen, Zola was talented. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Her pots were flawless, smooth, shiny, perfect in every technical way you could measure. But here's what no one could quite explain. They felt empty, like a beautiful house with no one living inside. Because Zola didn't speak to her clay, she commanded it. She didn't listen, she forced. Now, and while Kemi walked with love, Zola walked with pride. Where Kemi smiled, Zola sneered. Where Kemi shared, Zola hoarded. And where Kemi was praised quietly, Zola burned loudly. Because deep inside her chest, every time someone spoke Kemi's name with respect, something twisted, something ugly, something hungry. Jealousy. And jealousy, my friend, is a patient thing. It waits, it watches, and it moves when opportunity arrives. And opportunity was about to walk right into that village square. One evening, as the orange sun bled into the earth like a wound, a royal messenger entered the square. His staff struck the ground. Boom, boom, boom. And the entire village went silent. The chief has spoken. The feast of first harvest draws near. The chief demands vessels worthy of sacred wine. Every potter shall present their finest work. Now, this was no ordinary request. The chief's sacred wine wasn't poured into any jar. This was wine for ceremony, for ritual, for spirit. Only vessels blessed by true craft and something beyond craft could hold it. And the reward? Gold, honor, recognition before the palace itself. Kemi lowered her eyes, her heart beating softly, steady like it always was. But Zola? Zola lifted her chin, her lips curled into a slow, confident smile. This was her moment. This was where she would finally prove it, finally silence the whispers, finally make them forget the name Kemi. But some victories aren't meant to be taken. They're meant to be earned. And Zola was about to learn that the hard way. That night, under a moon that watched everything and judged nothing, both women began their work. Now, Kemi sat down slowly. She cleaned her clay with care. Before she touched it to shape, she closed her eyes, just breathed. Her hands moved slowly, respectfully. Every curve carried patience. Every line carried patience. She whispered gratitude into every vessel as it formed. Not once did she rush. Not once did she force. Because Kemi understood something most people never learn. The thing you're creating can feel how you're creating it. Now, across the village, Zola was moving very differently. Fast, sharp, aggressive. Her hands moved like blades cutting through stone. She shaped pots that looked like they belonged to a king's dream. Tall, elegant, breathtaking. But her heart was not still. It was boiling, because no matter how perfect those pots looked, one thought would not leave her alone. What if Kemi wins? The thought scratched at her like thorns, over and over and over. And that's when Zola made a decision that would change everything. She left her compound in the dead of night and walked toward the one place every elder in that village had warned them about, the Forbidden Forest. Now, here's where the story gets dark, and I need you to stay with me because this part matters. The Forbidden Forest was not just a place of trees and darkness. It was a place where the old things lived, where desperation met something it shouldn't. As Zola stepped past the tree line, the air grew colder. Even the insects stopped singing, like the night itself was holding its breath. Zola swallowed her fear. I will not lose. She kept walking, deeper, deeper, until, beneath a crooked tree that looked like it had once tried to run away, she found her. An old woman, or something that looked like one. Her back bent like broken branches, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. And before Zola could even open her mouth, the old woman spoke. You have come with envy. Zola froze. I want to win, she replied. The old woman smiled slowly. A dangerous desire. Zola clenched her fists. I need something to make sure my rival fails. The forest went completely silent. And then the old woman laughed, a dry cracking sound like old bones. I can give you a whisper, she said, a whisper that breaks clay from within. Zola's eyes went wide. A curse? A truth, she corrected. A seed of weakness. Place it where your rival's strength lives, and her pots will betray her in the fire. Now, here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. What would you do? Zola hesitated for just a moment. What do I give in return? The old woman leaned closer, her breath cold as river stone. Nothing now. Zola didn't like that answer. She knew she didn't like it. But jealousy, remember? Jealousy speaks louder than caution. She agreed. Now, the old woman placed a small pouch in her hands, dark powder inside. Scatter this where her clay rests, she whispered. Let her shape her own destruction. Zola took it, and as she walked away from that crooked tree, the forest breathed again, like it had gotten what it wanted. That same night, while Kemi slept peacefully beside her unfinished pots, Zola came. Moonlight lit the workspace like a stage. The quiet pots, the calm air, the innocence of it all. And for 1 second, just one, Zola's hand trembled. But then she opened the pouch and scattered the dark powder across Kemi's clay. It vanished like smoke, like it had never existed. Zola straightened up and smiled. Cold, quiet. It is done. She walked home in the dark, feeling like she had already won, but she had no idea what she had actually just set in motion. Because the next morning, when Kemi returned to her clay, something happened that no one, not Kemi, not Zola, not even the old woman herself, could have predicted. Kemi knelt by her clay and paused. Something felt different. Not wrong exactly, just heavy, like the clay had been holding its breath overnight. She frowned gently, touched it anyway, and as her fingers moved, the clay resisted. Slightly, barely, like it was struggling, like something inside it was pushing back. Now, a different woman might have forced it. A different woman might have grown frustrated, thrown it aside, started over, but not Kemi. Kemi closed her eyes, and instead of forcing the clay, she spoke to it. I will not fight you. I will listen.
Her hand slowed. Her breath deepened. And slowly, like a fist unclenching, the resistance softened. The clay yielded. Not perfectly, not beautifully, not like before, but honestly. Her pots came out simpler than usual, less polished, less grand, but something about them felt alive. Like they had survived something, like they had been through fire before the fire even touched them. Now, here's the thing no one tells you about poison. Sometimes it transforms what it was meant to destroy. Days passed. The village buzzed with anticipation. And finally, the day arrived. The palace courtyard was alive. Color everywhere. Music swelling. Expectation hanging in the air like smoke. Villagers lined every inch of open ground. Elders sat in stone silence. And at the center, beneath a carved canopy, sat the chief. His presence heavy. His eyes missing absolutely nothing. Beside him stood the oldest elder in the land, a man whose voice was rarely heard but always obeyed. One by one, the potters stepped forward. Beautiful jars, strong bowls, creative designs, each one impressive, but none of them stirred the air. Then Zola stepped forward. The crowd moved. Her pots were stunning, tall, flawless, polished like mirrors catching fire. Even the chief leaned forward. Zola bowed deeply, confidence pouring from every movement. These vessels, she declared, are worthy of the sacred wine. The elder nodded slowly. Place them near the kiln. Zola smiled. Victory was already dancing in her mind, already tasting the gold, already imagining the moment they'd stop saying Kemi's name. Then, Kemi was called. The crowd fell quieter. Her pots were not impressive. They were simple, humble, almost ordinary looking next to Zola's gleaming towers. Whispers spread through the crowd like a slow wind. Is this her best? What happened to her skill? Kemi said nothing. She placed her pots beside Zola's and stepped back, head slightly bowed, eyes peaceful, like she had already made her peace with whatever came next. The chief raised his hand. Silence fell like a curtain, and then 4 words, each one landing like a drumbeat. The fire will decide. The great kiln was lit. Flames roared like hungry spirits finally given permission to eat. Heat poured out in waves. The crowd stepped back instinctively, and the pots were placed inside. Side by side. Perfection and humility. Pride and patience. Curse and kindness. The fire closed around them, and inside that burning darkness, something began to wake. Now, here's what the crowd didn't know. Here's what even Zola didn't fully know. The old woman's powder, that dark, ancient thing scattered across Kemi's clay, was designed to find weakness, to exploit it, to pull apart whatever was most fragile and break it from the inside out. But Kemi had no fragility in those pots, because when the clay resisted her, she didn't fight it. She listened. She walked with the struggle instead of against it. She pressed patience into every wall, gratitude into every curve. And so, when the powder looked for weakness, it found none. But Zola's pots were built on something different. They were built on pride, on the desperate need to win, on a heart that was boiling while the hand stayed perfect. And when the fire reached them, the heat found the cracks that pride always leaves behind. One by one, Zola's beautiful, flawless, polished pots split. Not all at once, but one after another, like dominoes, like the fire knew exactly what it was doing. The crowd went completely still. And Zola stood there, watching her certainty crumble. The elder walked forward. He reached into the kiln with the long ceremonial tongs, and he brought out Kemi's pots. He turned one slowly in his hands, and then he looked at the chief and nodded. Now, I could end the story there, with Kemi winning and Zola losing and everyone going home. But that's not really the point, is it? The point is this. The curse looked for weakness, and what it found instead was the one thing jealousy can never manufacture: authenticity. The willingness to listen when something is hard, the patience to walk with struggle instead of around it. Zola's pots were technically perfect, but they were built on a foundation that the fire could feel: pride, envy, desperation. And fire doesn't care about appearances. Kemi never knew about the powder, never knew about the forest, never knew about the deal. She just felt something was off, and she chose patience over force. That choice, that was the real vessel, not the clay, not the kiln. There's an old saying in certain parts of the world that goes something like this: what you pour into your work is what survives the fire. So here's the question I'll leave you with tonight. What are you pouring in? Because the fire always decides. It always has. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the way you work, the way you create, the way you treat your craft, drop a comment below. Tell me which part hit hardest. Because stories like this one, they don't belong to one village. They belong to all of us. I'll see you in the next one.